Okay, so that this evening doesn't drag on unnecessarily and painfully longer than it needs to, perhaps we should start. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Celine Dion, and welcome to a brand new day. I'd like to take you back a few years to 1999, a year you may recall, overshadowed by the coming millennium, a year pregnant with both inane fear and inane hope. Our computers were about to shut down apocalyptically, confused by time going backwards to the birth of Jesus Christ himself. Robbie Williams, on the other hand, grinned his way into the future and sang of his cheery optimism. By the end of the year, we were all singing with him. Fear and hope. Hope is fear. None of this is important, or it might be, I can't remember. And that's the problem with origin myths. You forget which one was real. What I do know is this is where we started, as a conversation between three friends at the AA. Since then, 3 became 4, then 5, and now 7. But that sounds too Darwinian. Let's put it another way. Sexymachinery is the scale of an intimate conversation spoken by a countless number of contributors. They are all essential and inspiring, and they are part of us. Yes, all of this is important. Every single inscrutable atom. As much as we'd like to celebrate the new printed issue, Save Me From What I Want, for us this evening will be an autonomous issue, our 10th so far. Here, our guest editors, who you'll meet in a minute, take part in a common structure of time and place. A structure that is strong enough to sustain weaknesses and weak enough to invoke a kind of inexplicable coherence. But here I go again with those unreliable origin myths. Next, I'll be telling you that we were all contemporaries of Britney, Christine, and Justin in the Mickey Mouse Club. Well, we were. And that's where we learnt to be true to our art and to ourselves. Before we begin, I would like to thank, in particular, Belinda, Joel, and Mickey, and Peter at the AA for helping this evening happen, and especially also the chairman of the AA, Moisa Mustafavi, for supporting us from right at the beginning. Please enjoy this evening. There are no refunds. Patrick, it's over to you.
Thank you, Shimon. Ella Gibbs' contribution to this event goes some way to illustrate her working practice. When asked to contribute to this issue, Ella responded by focusing on our editorial process. How do 7 people agree on the content of a magazine? What happens when they cannot agree? What makes one piece more relevant than the other? We met Ella in social circumstances. We're friends, and so it was very natural that Ella spent one day with us while we collated the new magazine. We were called individually into another room and interviewed. Without wanting to make it sound sinister, the method could be compared to that of a police detective. We think we were all asked the same questions, and doubtless our answers were all different, but there will be a constant thread, hopefully. I asked a friend to describe what Ella does, and his answer was something relevant, which I take to mean a response to something sort of an editor.
Well, this is Martino's chair here, which is something new for giving a talk. First of all, I'd like to thank Sexymachinery for inviting me to do this. And basically, over the last months, I've been really interested in how they work together as a group. And I just was really curious and wanted to sort of investigate, because I felt some kind of affinity with the way they have their way of working as a sort of keeping an open process. So I proposed to them basically to go and interview them and take them individually into quite a formal situation and see how they responded to the questions. And so now I have a 1-hour video which was going to be played later, but Benjamin is going to be the control man, and he's going to fast forward and stop at clips of his choice, so you can see some of the things that came up during the talks. And so yeah, start. So it's 6 of them that I met, and it was accidentally the same day as Save Me From What I Want had arrived in their studio, and they were preparing it for, or bringing here to the launch. But no, I know. I like to. They don't like to be publicized.
And that's why it's interesting, like this opportunity is going to be because you know that you may be the only person who has a proposal to collaborate with 7 other people, except that you do something for those people.
And that was quite a difficult thing to somehow to do, because usually we have very informal discussions and it's never really about publicizing themselves. So I just wanted to bring them into the forefront, and this is them behind the scenes preparing, and Mackie is just making the Great Fire of London, which you will see later. And so maybe if you can fast forward, Benjamin. So the first person I spoke to was Patrick, and
it doesn't exist without.
So he thought that everyone would define Sexymachinery as a forum, and I asked everyone similar questions, more about what is Sexymachinery, and also what is the kind of vital ingredient that brought them together. And Patrick also says that the way that they invite people to contribute is, or they're interested in people contributing things that they don't do every day. And it's a place for people to experiment. And so can you fast forward, Benjamin? I asked him about what was the common sort of vital ingredient for the group, and he said that music was, and although then he said, although that's not true, because Dominic likes Dido.
It's not really like that. It's much more like someone who goes into a shop, not knowing any of the contribution, not knowing anything about it. I think that's the thing that I really want to take on.
And I asked him about what he kind of expected from the reader, or and it was quite difficult to get that answer from him. But we actually, with Patrick, we spoke for about 3/4 of an hour, and we were only supposed to be there for 10 minutes. So we were sort of trying to figure out about where Sexymachinery would be a good place to distribute, and who would be the audience, and how to open it up. So this is them again in their office preparing. And this is Kajsa. She said it's more about life. And I asked Kajsa about Dagmar, who's the missing person tonight, who's part of the... She's part of their working team, but at the moment she's in Holland. And she was talking about Dagmar and saying how nice it was to have her around. She said there's another girl, and she's intuitive, and she does things from her heart. She's in Denmark. Sorry, she's in Denmark. And Kajsa said, I don't want people to think that Sexymachinery is hard to understand, and that was really important to her. And she doesn't want to she's interested in pushing people to do things that they haven't done before. And sorry, this keeps going black. I don't know why. And for me, this was. I mean, as I was going into these kind of very formal interviews, and I was thinking, what am I? Oh, hang on. Here's Dagmar. You can't see. And I was really trying to think about how to, what I was trying to find out really. And still it's, very much about, I don't know, it's a kind of unknown thing. I feel like it's a study that I'm doing and I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to find out. This is Mackie. So
I guess the first one was a magazine. So it's a full magazine and architectural production. Maybe to go open for other things.
can you go on, please? We haven't got much time, so we go quite fast now. And Mackie did say that, in his words, I think it's a hobby in a positive sense. The making of it and the idea that they're all doing it sort of aside from everything else. And I was still trying to investigate how they all work together, and they're so much about undefined spaces. And he was saying that they're not following any rules; they're writing the rules as they're making. So, because it was really interesting going into that sort of space and not, being aware that anything could change at any time.
It's not really a question, it's more like a wish.
And what Mackie was wishing is, he says, it would be quite nice if we can do some other medium or use other mediums and bring in other rules and other people. As I asked them a lot about what they might wish, either for Sexy Machinery, where it can go, or the question they have to the group, or about the making of it. Yeah, so keep going. And
Context specific. So
Mackie likes his tea with Earl Grey with milk. So this is late into the night, and that was Mackie's favourite window. This is Schumann.
It was on about 4 years ago when we started
And I asked him about what he when I was talking to him, he seemed quite sure about what he wanted from the reader, and he did say that he demanded, or Sexy Machinery demanded something from the reader, and I wanted to know what that was. And first of all, he said that the feeling he wanted to evoke, or Sexy Machinery wanted to evoke, was
it's imperfect. By definition,
Yeah.
logic, it's imperfect, it's inconsistent. But I think that's
And do you
really
feel, And he did say that the reader was, he wanted them to feel wonderment.
But in most public places, it had to happen pretty much by yourself.
This is when he gets really demanding for the reader.
Because, I guess the idea of revelry and self-discovery.
Yeah, but he did then say that this one, for the Save Me From What You Want, is much easier, and you can put it in your back pocket, and you don't need to be isolated to read it. So here we are. So if you just keep going, keep going, keep going. And yeah, and we're nearly there. Dominic, where are you? There. Okay, this is Dominic.
for me, it's the dream of
So Dominic was talking about Sexymachinery as his spiritual home, and also that it actually gets a bit in the way. It's a bit spiky, he said. And I asked him about who reads Sexymachinery, and he did say, unfortunately, normally too many academic people. But he was also quite demanding of the reader. He did say that he says, they have to face a certain level of insecurity in their own world. So when you're reading Save Me From What I Want, yeah, maybe something like that will happen. So can we go on, Benjamin? Just keep forwarding now. Dominique was also interested. He was mentioning the contributors of Save Me From What I Want, and he said that our contributors became very specific and less open. He said that they were very much like, I want to tell you about this, and I'm not telling you how to deal with it, but I'll tell you about this. And it's very different from what they've normally had, which is much more open. So with this one, there's a lot of answers that need, a lot of questions that need answering. So this is Benjamin, and it was quite late by that time, and we had quite a short conversation, and he. He did say that it's not what we usually do, the making of Sexymachinery, and but then he said it's a way to make projects happen, and he definitely didn't agree with the idea of demanding anything from the audience. He said, I think we're proposing something more than demanding something. And then I tried to figure out what they were proposing, and we didn't quite get to the point. And he said that the book Save Me From What I Want would be perfect to read on the subway. And when I asked him about what he'd like the next publication to be, and he thinks that the idea of the live event is a nice medium to get people to do projects. And he talked about playing ping pong. They have a ping pong table in their studio. But it was a serious sort of formal interview, and I think Benjamin was a bit uncomfortable with that, and he kept asking me if I had any funny questions to ask.
And that's why it's interesting, like this.
So this is the group photo of Sexymachinery after they'd almost completed the jobs for the night. Okay, so now I just want to do have we got time for this dedication piece? Benjamin, can you put the other video on, please? So just really quickly, I asked, when we were up at the studio, I asked, lost my train of thought, sorry. I asked them all to play a record, to decide together which record could be played for tonight. And they chose Freeform 5. And I'm interested in everybody here in the audience of passing the mic around, and if you have a dedication to make, then just to mention this person that you might like to dedicate this night to. And Sexymachinery have dedicated the night to Dagmar, who is the absent missing person. So just got two, Natalie, Eugene are going to pass the mic around. If you can just pass it around the audience, and if you'd like to make a dedication to someone who's not here while this track is playing, it has to go around the audience as fast as possible. But maybe we can just think of other people who aren't here, and to launch the night.
Like to make a dedication to a friend of mine, Walter.
My grandmother.
My friend Clinton.
To my mum.
Maybe.
My cats, maybe?
To Louisa Smith.
GT Bruno.
And likewise.
My mum.
Shout going out to Taiko and Tomoko.
Colleen, who really wants to be here tonight. My friend Jessie.
Joe Lacey.
My big brother.
George and Tony. To the memory of Delmore Schwartz. Gregory Edds.
Megan.
Betsy's cat, who's on an aeroplane at the moment.
Ryan.
My dad.
My friend Aaron.
Mum.
Captain Billy Frascalcan.
My grandmother.
Same here, Woodkey.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I have to say George Bush.
It's alright.
Sahara and Ealing.
Everybody.
And I'm just making a dedication to my friend Amy.
Leila myself and Ashley.
And my name is Kajsa, and I'm going to introduce the next person, and I made kind of like a list. And I'm introducing Martino Gamper, who's actually sitting next to me. Martino Gamper is a furniture designer. Martino cooks great food. Martino makes unexpected combinations of things, so be it cooking or furniture. Martino is my friend. Martino is the German-speaking Italian who lives in London. Martino once took me and some more friends to his hometown in north of Italy, where we ate chestnut. Sometimes Martino contradicts himself within 2 sentences. Martino has a passion for corners. He made many nice pieces of furniture that actually fits in corners. He made a sofa, a shelf, speakers, and many more, which you soon will see. I think Martino is good in enjoying the moment, although he always says he wants to go or move somewhere else. Martino has a sparkle in his eye, a bit like a kid. Martino finds things on the street and transforms them into other, more beautiful things. Martino has a car with only one music cassette in it. Martino says he listens to the jazz radio channel. If you ask Martino, the answer to cooking is ginger. Martino wakes up early in the morning. Martino has a vacuum cleaner in his toolkit. Martino always puts the screws in so that they are flush. Martino told me to cut the tomatoes the other way because it keeps them better together. Martino is a great collaborator. Martino always moves things from one place to another. Martino has an eye for details. Martino sometimes works with an upholsterer called Clive. Martino is worth getting to know, and now Martino will show some more.
Hello everybody. I hope I can live up to those expectations. Quickly to introduce a bit what Kaiser was saying already, and I think it's interesting. I see some parallels from Sexymachinery and the way I work. I'm a trained cabinet maker many years ago, and I've kind of left the trade because I really felt like trapped in this thing that had to produce things that were beautiful and certain price, certain taste of other people, and kind of wanted to move on from that, and found it quite difficult sometimes in college to find your own space where you could explore your things. So for my degree show, the RCA, I kind of investigated the idea of looking the way the corners are used in our everyday spaces, and it kind of gave me this new dimension to work with, in that I kind of people who kind of accepted that I would kind of play within those boundaries. And moving on from there, I've tried to always kind of try to not to answer particularly kind of the question that people ask me to do, but to find that way for me to be in my space, in the way the corner is the perfect thing for me, that it's got those three dimensions, and I could move within those boundaries without kind of answering too much other people's idea of how furniture should be. And so a lot of my furniture, in a way, quite quickly made, quite instant made pieces. A lot of times I'd be driving around London and trying to find unused furniture, going to skips, and in a way combining them with other pieces. And this is kind of spontaneous way of making furniture that's kind of was very important for me, to liberate me from those kind of parameters that are very set in a way what furniture should be, and the way that they kind of interact with the space. So in that sense, there is, as Kaiser was mentioning, there's a project I've been doing for about 3-4 months now, and it's called Trattoria al Capello, and it's like a restaurant that is happening once a month, and been doing it together with Kaiser, Maki, Alex, and the idea is to create a space where I could, because I have this interest in cooking, I could find this space where I could cook without having to open a restaurant, without having to work in a professional way as a chef, because once you work as a chef, it restricts you. You have 40 covers you have to deliver, and in the same way I'm always trying to escape a bit from what people ask me to do. But I find it quite interesting that, as Kaiser was saying before, not to answer a particular question, find your way of kind of doing things. So the idea with the restaurant is that it's happening once a month, and it's quite a small space. About 25 people have space there, and the title for it is kind of is not food for thought, but thought for food. It's a bit like reversing in a way that I think we are very trained every day to use our eyes and our visual tools to see things and to read things. But in the same way, I think our taste buds and our palate is kind of losing sometimes. So to me, it's interest to gather those two things together, is the furniture and the food. And I think cooking is also a very liberating thing because you have to react very spontaneous to a situation. You haven't got time to sketch 50 times a detail. You have to react on the spot, and basically you have heat. You work against heat and time. And this spontaneous way of doing things, I think, is very good for me at least to come up with new results and to try out things. And that's similar things I try to do sometimes with furniture. That you have pieces that you collect, and you have to make something out of that. So you have something given in a way, but in that sense you have to interact with those given things. And I think also the interesting thing for me for cooking is not just the cooking itself, but actually the way you gather your ingredients. Is you go to a market and you have to read whatever is given, and I particularly like the way of using seasonal food. So you have to see and read what is out there, and you have to kind of react spontaneous on the spot what you're going to be buying and what you're going to be combining. So it's kind of in a way you design without paper, without any concept. It's basically thoughts and pictures of taste that you try to combine together. I also like to collaborate a lot with Abakis from Sexymachinery, with Rainer. He used to share a studio with him. So a lot of pieces are actually made in collaboration with people, and I think it's very important in our work to share certain ways of working together. Because I think if you work too much on yourself, it isn't basically as satisfying, and it's nice to share different points of view. You might not agree on all the particular ideas, but I think it's good to kind of find a compromise sometimes, even though you try to push your thoughts through. This particular one is an exhibition for the British Council. It was called the Book Corner, and it kind of fitted quite nicely in with my work. We were asked by the British Council, me and Obeka, to design a show, a traveling exhibition that was going to be traveling around the world for 2 years, and it was about British publications in design, art, literature, architecture, and the idea was to kind of create a reading corner that they could travel around, and that's something that happens quite often to me by collecting things. And I think if anybody really wanted to design something useful, I think it would be an anti-clamping car. That's a bench, a corner bench, that kind of borrows the idea of Gary Rietveld, but kind of takes it a step further and eliminates the base unit. So the corner becomes a structural piece in a way. It's just not, apart from being functional, it also becomes this structured things, putting 3 planes together. Right. So actually one of my first pieces that I'd done actually with corner was actually light. And it was a project set at the RCA. It was called Home Alone, and we had to design something for ourselves. And at that time I didn't really have a space. I was just staying in somebody's flat, but I didn't really have a light because I was sleeping on top of a kitchen. So I wanted to create something intimate for my little place. So one of the first things I kind of design a light, so I could kind of read and feel I've got at least one corner, not 4 corners in a space, but at least one I could kind of call myself. It's a bookshelf that basically becomes like a room divider, like a paravent. That has the book at the back of the shelves rather than being in the front. So you don't really want to show off with your books. It's a bit kind of keeping your books at the back, and you walk into the back. I also have, as I was saying, interest in combining, kind of working with materials that are maybe not used sometimes in a particular way, and been working quite a bit with an upholsterer friend Clive, and it's kind of interesting to look the way that craftspeople use materials and go completely other way and say, well, let's try to do things different. And I think quite enjoy working with craftspeople. It's a loudspeaker. Okay, if I don't know how many people we are, but I prepared some food to have a little taster. Maybe 50, 60 kind of covers, but basically it's because of this season I have very much like pumpkin at the moment. So it's a pumpkin beetroot soup that has a touch of ginger pecorino to it, so you can sample it a bit later. This is another project I've done with Rainer, a friend of mine. It was basically in the beginning it was like a joke. We found this old football in our workshop and we needed a light for an exhibition, and it was kind of 10 o'clock at night, so we cut a hole in the football and we put the light in there and hung it up for this exhibition, and people really liked it, and we said, well, where can we buy this light? And it's like, no, it's not for sale, you know. And it was just about half a year before the World Cup, 2002, and at one point we thought, we're going to be rich, buy football, stick a light in there. So as we did some research in trying to find this exactly the same football, we realized that the football we had, about 5-6-year-old football, was the only one in the market that had exactly those kind of translucent properties. And we couldn't find it basically, so we thought of using used football, called up Manchester United and Arsenal, so I asked them if we had any used footballs, and they're like, are you crazy? We give them to the kids. But we kind of got interested in this idea of finding somebody who could make us this football, and after a lot of research we found probably the last football stitcher in this country, up in Suffolk. And this is 65-year-old, very nice man who stitched footballs all his life, and he got bankrupt in the 80s, end of the 80s, when Nike and Umbro went to Far East. But he used to stitch all the footballs for the major clubs, and they were called Swift footballs. And he was really keen on kind of collaborating with us, but unfortunately he made us two prototypes, but I think he hadn't been stitching for 15 years maybe, so they weren't really round. So we were a bit embarrassed because we didn't want to tell him, listen, that we can't use you, but we still wanted to work with him. So we said we're gonna try to find somebody else, but we're gonna keep him kind of informed at least and kind of be part of this thing. And so we kind of gave up because we couldn't find a football that was translucent. Until we did lots of research on the internet, and we found this company in Switzerland who produces football in small patches, because all the people told us you have to order 10,000 footballs, then we make your own football. So we found this guy who could stitch us 100 in our own material. So basically that's what we done then. And one more interesting thing about the football is that we didn't know until about 2 months ago how football is actually stitched, how the finishing panel is actually inserted. And this is kind of things that nobody knows really in the industry. Our producer wouldn't tell us, he doesn't know because they don't tell him. It's kind of a secret, and that kind of got inspired in a way that it's the most normal looking thing of football, and every kid knows one. But if you try to actually remake one, it's quite difficult actually, and in a way that was interesting to us. There was a project at Bloomberg's together with Zabakis and Rainer again. They asked us to do an installation on 4 floors, and it was in August, so in the summer. So we thought to bring a bit of wood or forest into an office, and the whole thing was called the Woodlands. So this is a big bunny, slightly inflated. So we printed our own fabric that had like little animals on it, and basically it was a big beanbag. People could just jump in there and get distracted from their work a bit. That was the Village Fete 2001. Don't know if anybody of you knows the Village Fete, the VNA. It's an event every summer, one weekend in July, August, and it's basically they ask loads of young designers and creative people to come in and have a stall and to make something and entertain people. So we thought we're going to collect loads of rubbish in the streets and make furniture on site. And the name was like Furniture While You Wait, so people could pick their own pieces and we would just put them together and make them into pieces. And that kind of evolved more and more, became more and more sophisticated. And a couple of very good skits outside colleges usually. So I really recommend you to look around colleges, especially RCA and Imperial College. That is a screen printing table I made for Abaki. For the table mats for the restaurant, we thought to screen print them, but do them we didn't really have much money, so we thought we could make our own screens. So we used some net curtain material, and Kaiser had this brilliant idea to use wood glue to mask the actual screen. So whatever it's not masked, you use basically as a trace, and it worked quite well. The resolution was probably about, I don't know, 12 dpi, but so that's another thing on the Woodlands. We made some foxes that would travel around the office. That's the first version of the sofas. And I just done a commission for a family where they have 4 kids, and basically they wanted to have a sofa for their playroom, quite a big playroom. And so the day I delivered the sofa, it took about 1 minute, and the kids were all over the place because basically it's hollow inside, so you can crawl through. So the kids, they were just amazed. They couldn't believe it. That's the log for the Woodlands. It's a leather upholstered log. That was the first football we found, an old Umbro football. It's actually quite nice. That was fun. Okay, thank you. So you can sample the food afterwards.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Man Somerlinck. Man is a guitar maker from Belgium. As maybe most of the guitar makers, he doesn't know how to play the instrument. But that's not what matters to him. What he creates is a tool for other artists to perform. Man certainly doesn't aim to create the ultimate instrument like the equivalent of the Stradivarius for violin or the balabushka for the cool cube, but a very specific one for each of the artists he encounters. He is an artisan, and as such, he invests the things he invests in what he builds. It's mostly time and also love. So he's tonight, and he's gonna bring us a documentary about poverty in Brussels.
Can I have the light off? Oh wait, the slide thing's not working. No. Ah, yeah. Poverty in Brussels. Jerome's place. Jerome. Eddie. tired hands. The chef brings home the bread. Brussels flea market. A girl full of hope.
Okay, now we're going on a space mission. Inevitably that sounds intriguing, but as it is with space missions, from our earthly point of view, they normally turn out to be rather dull experiences. Too small is the image, the sound crackling away, the vision of the spectator remains in 2D, and his position is only a living room. We try to imagine space, but we end up looking at something too small to get a clearance from Animal Rights Watch to transport a dead hamster to Peckham. However, sometimes you get someone who manages to explain to you what it is and how it feels, and once your mind gets hold of a tiny bit of it, it is out there in space, and the imagination exponentially accelerates to discover new worlds all around. To find that, you do not have to go very far, since Brandon and Alex are around. They turn 2D images, words and sound recordings, abstractions of our life, into oscillating moments of the physical now. Those 3D moments have many more dimensions than I have words for. To prevent you from running away in fear of space sickness, it probably helps if I tell you a bit about the little I know and heard about the two guys taking us there. Brandon La Belle, very quiet for someone obsessed with sound. He thinks about sound as though it were material. He smiles a lot and can comfort you by smiling so much. He writes writing with sound in mind. He is an editor. He's a writer. How can he write words that are silent when he wants to talk about sound so noisy? He's a gentleman. He's from the sunny West Coast. Found his way into architecture in the best way. He never meant to be there. It came as an accident. He's unashamedly positive, and that is good. Alex Hoare is never off. Studied architecture at Bartlett, then Princeton. Worked with DNS, most notably on the cloud building, which is probably a nice symbol for Alex's relation to architecture. When he studied with Peter Eisenman, he made movies from sounds and architecture for movies. Alex is restless. He has too much energy. Doesn't know where he ends and his architecture begins. This is good. Myth has it he gave up a Hollywood career in preference of architecture. He starred in Chris Nolan's first film, The Following, as the evil lead aesthetic thief. Alex Hoare is therefore a person of strange judgments, who will one day find home only to decide it is too stable and start again. Even ESA has figured out that every space mission not only needs a probe but also a lander, because otherwise there is nothing for us to experience. Alex and Brandon make such experiences possible. They're teaching together at the AA, and if you ask me, they should call their unit Beagle 3. I'm very happy that they are here tonight, and that the discovery of new species of spaces and life is what Sexymachinery is for me. Brandon and Alex are definitely Sexymachinery.
yes now.
contributing. We'd like to introduce someone who also contributed tonight, but trans selfie, he's a photographer from Malmö, and he's come especially for tonight almost. And he's got something about palm tree. So he wanna stand up? Actually, it's not really a conclusion. I've been given some factual and practical things to tell you. So, Sexymachinery, the new one, number 9, which is the one before this one, is sold next door, and at the Triangle downstairs. Also, the bar is still open until 9, but after that, we can all go. You're all invited to Happen Walk, bus number 55, 18 to 24 Happen Walk, starting well, open late. And the other thing